In parts 1 and 2, we added a jetpack thruster and fuel system, as well as velocity damage and a health system. In today's video, we'll continue by finally adding an interface so we can see where our health and fuel systems are at. An interface, or basically anything displayed on screen for users to see in Unreal, is called a widget. So far, everything we've done has just been inside our first-person blueprint. Let's jump out of that, head to the main content folder, and let's create a folder called widgets. Just press Ctrl-Shift-N for new folder and give it a name. If you miss your chance to name it, if you click off somewhere, F2 is the shortcut for renaming stuff. Now, in here, let's right-click User Interface and Widget Blueprint. The first class is fine. Let's call this one HUD, or HUD for Heads-Up Display. In our HUD widget, all we need is something called a progress bar. If we drop that in, though, the progress bar takes up the whole screen. There are a lot of different ways to lay out a widget. There's all kinds of containers you can put things within. One easy way for now is to use what's called a canvas panel. Delete the progress bar and let's search and add that to start instead. A canvas panel is basically a container in Unreal Widgets that lets you arrange child widgets with absolute positions, sizes, and anchors, giving full and responsive control over a layout that works with different screen sizes. Now, within the canvas panel, let's drop another progress bar. You'll see it at the top left. Just select it, and under anchors, let's choose bottom left. Now, if we zero out the position, it's anchored to the bottom left corner. Click and drag to fine-tune X and Y position. Let's go for an even -150 on Y and 150 on X. The position is now relative to the anchor. And as you can see, it works with various popular screen sizes, which you can check with this little drag and drop over here. For the bar size on X, let's shoot for 300. Now I'll show you how to customize your own bar design in a minute, but for now, let's just use this default one. Let's say this is our health bar, so we can make that fill color a universal red. If we compile and playtest the game, this is nowhere to be found. That's because we need to add it to our character. Back in our first-person character blueprint, let's create another event graph and call this one Create HUD. Add event begin play so it happens right away when we load into the game, and let's add create widget. For class, just search for HUD. That's what we named it. Now we've created the widget on begin play so it exists in the game, but now we need to add it to the viewport, so use add to viewport. The target is our widget, and now compile and test. As you could see, we have an empty bar. To officially tie this into our health bar, we need to connect it to the percent value here in our widget. After all, 100% health should be all red. To do that, click this chain to create a binding. This made a new function in the widget's event graph called getPercent. You could see at the top right here, we can toggle between the designer we were just in and this event graph. In the main event graph, similar to other blueprints, we have events. For example, event construct, which is what happens when we create this widget in our viewport. When this widget is constructed, let's do a simple cast to BP underscore first person character. A cast node is essentially a way to check if an object is a specific type and access its properties or functions if it is. You may hear beginner tutorials throw around a blanket warning to never use cast nodes or similar advice. You should understand why cast nodes can be bad in some situations. Casting essentially permanently loads whatever you're casting to into memory. So every time this widget exists, it'll also keep the first-person character blueprint in memory. Think about it though. For the widget to exist, the first-person character blueprint must already exist. In our case, the first-person character is always present in the game as our player character. Casting in this situation is very cheap and perfectly fine. From the cast object, just choose the broader class of the object you want to check against. For example, Since we're working with a player character, we can just get player character. Now, the whole point of casting is that we now have access to all the helpful information in our first-person character blueprint. For example, we can access variables like health. So we could just get the health value directly, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's delete that for now. The reason we performed this cast in the main event graph of our widget and not within our function is so we can set a new variable. In this case, let's promote BP first-person character to a new variable by right-clicking on it and selecting Promote to Variable. Essentially, we're just creating a shortcut to store a reference to our first-person character blueprint, so we don't have to perform the cast repeatedly every time we need it. This makes the setup cleaner and more efficient, as we can reuse the reference whenever needed. Like here, our get% function. Now, we just control drag that variable to get it. And from there, let's just type in health. Let's get health. This is the health variable straight from our second video where we set this up. Now, this is the new percentage of our health bar. One problem, remember, our health is a float or a decimal value that goes from 0 to 100. The health bar is displayed as a percentage. So to do that conversion of our float value to a percentage, let's just divide by 100. Now, when we do our playtest, that works as expected. Let's do another progress bar, but this one, let's make our fuel amount. So in the widget, back to the designer, select the progress bar again. Let's rename this to health with F2. Remember, F2 is just to rename anything. Control D to duplicate. We'll move this on X 150 as well, maybe -200 for Y. Rename it to fuel. Let's make fuel a bit yellow. And under %, create a new binding. Again, we already have this variable because we cast to it in the main graph, so you can see why we did it this way. Control drag to get, then let's search fuel. Get fuel amount, divide by 100, and return. Now, when playtesting, I'm realizing my regeneration amount is way too high. It just regenerates too fast. Again, isn't it nice that this is just a variable? We don't need to go hunting in some graph. We just select our first-person character blueprint, glance at variables, and it looks like my fuel regeneration is 5. Let's set that to like 0.2. And yeah, that feels pretty good. Also, my damage is a bit too forgiving. Before we said to count anything above 60, let's just change that to 50. And you know what, while we're here, let's just promote that to a variable and call it damage threshold. Make sure it goes into the range as well. Cool, that feels right. Now, I told you I'd cover custom progress bars, so let's do that as well very quickly. You'll need 2 images for each bar, one full and one empty. Create them yourself in something like Photoshop or Affinity Photo, or just download the ones I made here for you in the description. Just search image in your progress bar details and you'll see background image and fill image. Simply upload what you're using into Unreal. You might have to change your size to fit your proper image. If you're using my image, it's just 400 on X by 50 on Y. But there you go. Now as it progresses, it switches between the 2 images. We can use this technique for both health and fuel. Keep in mind the fill color and opacity matter still, and I think I'll keep my fuel a yellow and my health red. There you have it. We have a custom health and fuel bar. Thanks to the first couple videos, we have thrust, we have fuel consumption, and regeneration. We've got health and velocity damage systems, and now we have a nice user interface to display everything to our players. From here, we'd like some sound, maybe some grunts and groans when we get hurt, as well as the Jetpack thruster sound. We also want an on-death event for our game, so something happens when our player dies. All of that's coming in future parts to this training, so subscribe, and I'll be back to finish this off in future videos. If you don't want to wait, all parts are available right now as early access for my Patreon subscribers of at least $3 or more. That's my lowest tier. That's patreon.com/RileyB3D. Patreon is by far the best way to support this channel. Once again, let's do some playtesting and admire our work so far. Hopefully, I'll see you in part 4 and beyond, either right now if you support on Patreon or over the next few weeks. Again, we'll wrap it up with some sound effects and an event that happens when our player dies.